Good morning. It is Monday, the 27th. Can you believe April is pretty much over? We're almost done with a third of the year. That is crazy because a month and a half of this year has been spent not doing anything. Anyway, update on my life. Yesterday we were kind of craving fries. Well, actually we've been craving fries for a while, for the past 2 weekends. So we went grocery shopping on Saturday, and then we bought a bunch of potatoes. I'd intended on buying those potatoes to make a curry or a stew or something, but then last night my husband he decided to make dinner for us, which was great. And then he made fries out of the potatoes. So it was really good, really addicting. Homemade fries are good. You should try it sometime. It's really easy too. You can ask me about it. Alright, so we're kicking off week 3. And from here on out, we're kind of, I'm hoping that the activities will be a lot more investigative, as in you're not so much you're maybe filling out a sort of worksheet or template, but for the most part, you're doing a lot more stuff in your home with your hands, not so much screen work, except when you're writing things down. So I hope they feel more interesting to you that way. This week, we're going to start talking about how we are living unsustainably, and that's what this screencast is going to be about, just the ways that we have been violating those 3 principles of sustainability that we talked about at the very beginning, and just kind of to give you a rundown of this week. So we have that lecture today, and then tomorrow, I'm going to kind of kick off a activity that's going to go on. It's a 2-part activity that goes for Tuesday and Wednesday, and basically you're going to be doing an inventory of some area of your house, and you're going to be kind of analyzing the materials that the items in your inventory are made of, and we'll be kind of just kind of investigating the stuff that we have basically, and then for the other 2 weeks, because really if you include this week, you only have 3 weeks of school left. So for the rest of this unit, we're going to be kind of focused more on consumption and kind of analyzing our own habits of consumption, because I think sometimes we're just not that aware of the ways that we consume. So we're just going to take a kind of neutral, just kind of checking it out, just kind of investigating in our own lives the way we consume things, and just so that we gain more awareness, because more awareness is always good. Okay, so here we are, living unsustainably. So you remember back at the very beginning of this unit, we talked about the 3 principles of sustainability that the Earth has set in place, those 3 processes that help the Earth maintain a steady state. And that was that you have an energy balance, so energy in equals energy out, and then matter is cycling, and it's also finite. Matter is not coming into the Earth really, and it's also not leaving the Earth. So what we have on this Earth is what we have. And the last one, oh good, my face doesn't cover it, is a high amount of biodiversity makes the Earth more resilient to any changes or disturbances. And when it says renewable energy up here, that's really the same as our energy balance, energy in equals energy out, because ideally all of our energy should be coming from the sun. That should be our renewable source of energy. Okay, and so what we're doing in violation of all 3 of these pillars is that, first of all, largely we don't use renewable energy sources for all of our energy needs. I don't have a car that runs on renewable energy. My car is not a Tesla. I don't have solar panels in my apartment. I mean, I don't have a house to put solar panels in, but even if I did, I don't have solar panels, nor am I planning to get solar panels in the near future. So I can't harness like solar energy like that. I don't have a windmill outside either, so I'm not harvesting wind energy either. So all my energy for my electronics, the stove, the kitchen, the lights, that's mainly coming from non-renewable energy sources. Although PG&E does have this, you can opt in for like a greener energy source thing. With the matter on this earth, the stuff that is, matter is cycling. Like I said, matter, it goes in a cycle, and if you use up the resources too quickly, you have to wait for those resources to replenish. And the problem is that we are using those resources too quickly, faster than they can replenish. So then we're kind of creating shortages of these renewable resources. And in the process of our using up resources, in the process of us consuming these resources, we're also creating pollution and waste. And remember I said that matter doesn't come into the earth and it doesn't leave the earth really either. So if we create pollution and waste, it stays here on earth until something happens to it or we do something about it. And then lastly, because of the pollution we're creating, or we're using up resources too quickly and taking resources away from other animals, or we're destroying their habitats, all of that contributes to animals, going extinct and biodiversity decreasing. And consumption is really fueling all three of those violations, because we over-extract resources when we're using up matter too quickly. And when we're over-extracting resources and basically, using up resources before they have time to replenish, we're basically destroying habitats in the form of, we took away resources that other species now can't have, or just the actual process of taking out those resources is leaving that habitat kind of a mess, and then it's not as healthy for the species that actually live there. We consume energy. We don't always think about how energy is a form of our consumption, but how often you use the lights, or how often you leave the lights on, or how often you have something plugged into the socket, a wall socket all the time. That's another form of our consumption. And we consume a lot of energy, especially right now because we're all doing online school, and the only way I can do this is if my laptop is charging at the same time. So I'm consuming energy right now, even doing this. And that consumption of energy, the whole process of like mining for our sources of energy, that generates a lot of pollution and waste. The whole extraction process for our energy sources, extraction of other resources in general, it also generates pollution and waste. And then the actual tangible items that we consume, like the things we buy at the store, at some point when we get rid of those items, it might become just more waste that we just throw away because maybe it broke, or it got worn out, or it stopped serving its purpose, so we got rid of it, and then now it's just waste in general because we threw it away or something. So that's why a lot for the rest of the 3 weeks we're going to be focusing on like our consumption habits and understanding how we consume things, so we can try to maybe become more aware of the ways that we could lessen the negative effects of our consumption. So we're just going to talk a little bit about energy and kind of understanding energy a little bit. Electricity is a form of energy, and it's mainly used when we're like building products, making products, and when we're running appliances. That's why so many things require being plugged into an electrical socket, like my computer charger, the lamps, the blender, the food processor, the toaster, the microwave, the fridge, the oven, all that stuff. And then fuel is another source of source of energy, and that's mainly used for like transportation. Think about like the gas in your car, or fuel for any train, bus, BART, planes, helicopters. Fuel is also used for heating and cooking. My stove is a gas stove, so there's fuel that I have to like. Whenever I turn on the stove to cook, I'm using fuel for that. And most of our energy is coming from non-renewable resources. And the problem with that is it's called non-renewable because it's basically not going to renew itself in our lifetime. So as far as we are concerned, it's non-renewable. And that means there's not an unlimited source, and eventually it will run out. When it will run out kind of depends on how quickly we use this energy, although we are pretty high consumers of energy nowadays. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, the extraction of this energy through mining, it really hurts habitats in that area because it kind of just it's a huge disruption because you have to clear land, so you clear all the plants and vegetation around that area, and then you're basically digging up the earth, and it's a huge disruption to anything that's living there. It causes pollution in the air and the water, and all that is just contributing towards climate change. In fact, I was just watching a video yesterday about how, when the California gold rush was happening, there was this area kind of south of San Jose, just south of San Jose, so still considered part of the Bay Area. And they were, there was a mining area, and they wouldn't use liquid mercury to help mine for gold or pan for gold really, because it was, it kind of clung to gold, so it would help the miners find gold better. And so they had all these pipes and machinery and whatnot, that had mercury all over it, and then eventually got abandoned, and now that mercury waste is leaching out of the rocks into the creeks that are in that area and feeding into the San Francisco Bay. So mercury is actually it's been a problem in the San Francisco Bay because the streams that kind of empty into it are contaminated with mercury from other mining and extraction that's happened in the past. So that's just one example of how extraction is can be damaging to our waterways. These are examples of non-renewable energy sources. We have fossil fuels, which you've probably heard before, and fossil fuels include coal, petroleum, natural gas, and then nuclear energy is also, in recent being a relative word, recently we developed, nuclear energy as a source of energy, and that's usually using the element uranium to, you're basically crashing two nucleuses together, and it kind of just releases a lot of energy. So those are just some examples of our non-renewable energy sources. See, look, there's a picture of a stove. That could have been my stove, a gas stove. And so ideally, energy should be from a renewable source. A lot of pictures. Like solar, wind, hydroelectric, geothermal, wave energy, and really the sun is kind of the source of all these other forms of energy, because I don't know if you remember Mr. Wang talking about climate, but first of all, solar energy is from the sun, but the sun is also responsible for causing the wind patterns on our Earth anyway, and warming the Earth. So ideally, if we were to be truly sustainable, all our energy would be sourced from the sun, if we, work backwards. And the pros for this is, clearly they're renewable, so they don't run out and they don't pollute the earth. Why isn't renewable energy such a common thing? Because it's expensive to, at least for, the way that we live with, we need to store energy so that we can, funnel it into our wall sockets and to charge our everything devices. That is expensive. Making solar panels can be expensive. Buying solar panels can be expensive. For some things like wind power, windmills, if it's not a windy day, you're having like a particular like dry spell, it's not gonna collect energy because it's not turning. If it's cloudy or raining, you're not gonna collect solar energy because the sunlight isn't reaching your solar panel. So you need like a generator as a backup system, or you need a way to store this energy so that on really sunny days you can store up some excess energy and then use that on a rainy day. But then you need to build those, you need to make those generators and batteries, and that might be expensive. Again, just all parts of this kind of setting these kinds of things up is expensive. And then particularly with hydroelectric energy, that's basically turning running water, and the motion of running water into energy. That can damage upstream habitats and just kind of disrupt the water ecosystem, because you're kind of putting a barrier into the natural flow of the water. So then that sometimes might not be too good either. But, scientists are continuously working towards, making renewable energy a more viable option. So if any of you become environmental engineers, maybe we will rely on you for, the new innovations of the future. So now going back to, or talking about matter, different matter require, they don't all break down in the same amount of time. It takes varying amounts of time for things to break down and to renew. And because of that, we can't consume too quickly. We have to use resources conservatively so that we don't suddenly have a shortage of anything. The problem is if we kind of just, ignore the fact that the Earth has its own timeline for breaking down and renewing different resources, and we just kind of want to consume things as much as we want whenever we want, then we can run into problems. And then, as I said earlier, matter does not come into the Earth except for meteors, and it does not leave the Earth. So when we create waste or pollution or something that doesn't break down for a very long time, it just stays on this Earth, not broken down for a very long time. And if it doesn't break down in our lifetime, that like plastic, which takes pretty much forever to break down as far as we're concerned, because we won't be alive to see it break down, then the resources that are inside that plastic or whatever it is that's not breaking down, like the carbon atoms or whatnot, then nobody can use those resources until it finally breaks down. And so those resources kind of get trapped. They're there on the Earth, but they're just kind of trapped because they're not really being broken down efficiently. So an example of the ways we are using matter on Earth, again, non-renewable resources, it basically means that it doesn't really renew in our lifetime. And so metals and minerals we mine for, like how I talked about the mercury example earlier, people mined for mercury, and it was in, metals tend to be in ores in the Earth, so you just mine for ore, and then you melt the metal out of it. So the problem with mining is, as I mentioned earlier, is that it can be a huge disruption to the habitat, because you have to clear the land, and then you're just digging into the earth and disrupting everything that was just there in that spot, and it can cause a lot of pollution, it can cause a lot of waste. I talked about how there's waste from all that mercury mining that's now just kind of leaking into the rocks in that area, and from the rocks it's leaking into the waterways, and so that the damage can be like far-reaching just because of how things spread around. And yeah, you get habitat and biodiversity loss because now a species ecosystem is being polluted, or maybe you just took all the resources in that area, and so the species in the area don't have resources anymore. Mining also requires a lot of water and usage. So like, it doesn't just contaminate water, but you're also using a lot of water for the mining process. I'm not really going to go into the process of mining because I don't really want to spend time talking about that, but it uses up a lot of water too. So you're consuming a lot of water and contaminating water at the same time. And then sometimes mining companies, they'll file bankruptcy, and then when they do that, they don't really have to take care of the mess that they made. Which is another problem, like with the, if you have abandoned mines and it has, toxic waste in it, then it just starts, leaching out and contaminating the area around it. We also have renewable resources, things that do naturally replenish, generally within our timeline. But we're also using our renewable resources too fast as well, and we're using these resources faster than they can replenish. Examples of our renewable resources are forests, soil, fertile soil, aquifers, fisheries, clean air and water. So we're cutting down trees too quickly, or we're cutting down trees in a way that's not sustainable. So that would be called just clear cutting trees, leading to deforestation. So our forests are shrinking, and that's bad for many reasons. A, because trees really help to kind of capture carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and then use that for photosynthesis and turn that into energy. But trees also are a source of food. I mean, plants in general, trees and the producers of any ecosystem are supporting the entire food web above them. And third, forests are a source of habitat for a lot of creatures. And so shrinking forests is just detrimental for a lot of those reasons. Because you get decreased habitats. Soil loss from erosion, or soil just getting contaminated because of agriculture and using toxic chemicals, pesticides, and stuff like that. And so maybe the soil gets contaminated, or the soil can get contaminated from mining, like we just talked about multiple times with the mercury. And so then you don't have soil that can grow things very well. So then it's basically like a dead zone on land. I think my face is going to cover something at some... Oh no. I'm just gonna move this. Okay. Aquifers are basically like underground storages of fresh water that we use to drink water and do anything that requires water. And if we're using water too quickly before aquifers can replenish, then you kind of get a shortage of fresh water that we can use. Overfishing just depletes the amount of fish that is available, not just for our use, because it's not always just about us wanting to eat fish, but that fish that we are overfishing is a vital part of whatever food chain or food web that it's a part of in its ecosystem. So then declining fish stocks can be detrimental to the health of that ecosystem, just because various species are disappearing out of the food chain, and that and so that can just disrupt a whole lot of other things. And then air pollution, water pollution from any of the above that we've been talking about with mining or extracting, consuming, and what everything about that can cause pollution in the air or the water. And pollution is what we're going to be talking about next week more in depth. But and so all of this can lead to species extinction, and species extinction is basically we're losing biodiversity. So that's like our third pillar of sustainability that is being violated. So I'm going to stop there because next week we'll kind of delve into pollution and waste a little more, and the ways that we contribute to water pollution, air pollution, and like other things. So tomorrow you're going to be, I'll have like a little screencasting that I'm just gonna briefly go over materials, because it'll be helpful for just types of materials, because that'll be helpful for the activity that you're gonna do on Tuesday and Wednesday, the inventory activity. Let's see, is there anything else I wanted to say? Oh yeah, Mr. Wang is gonna be sending out an email shortly at some point, probably the next day or so, just kind of outlining grading policies, end of the year stuff, and just in general the questions that you've been having, and he's going to include a little video about that, so look out for that at some point. That should hopefully answer most of your questions about how to make sure you get credit for the class and everything like that. And then very lastly, new friend to introduce today. This is Vera. She is my aloe vera plant that I bought this past winter at a kind of like a boutique sale thingy. But yeah, so that's my little aloe vera plant. Alright, I hope you have a good Monday. I hope you had a good weekend and stayed safe. I will talk to you tomorrow.